Hey there, my name is Naomi Moneypenny. I am the Chief Technology Officer at ManyWorlds. We're a small but very fast-growing software company based in Houston, Texas. And I wanted to talk to you today about 1986. You might wonder why I'm asking about 1986, but do you remember 1986? I kind of do. It's a little fuzzy, I have to admit. Do you remember when Reagan and Gorbachev were bringing the end to the Cold War? Do you remember when Top Gun was the coolest movie out there? And most importantly, do you remember when the Nintendo Entertainment System original came out? Then if you do, then you remember 1986. The reason I want to talk to you about 1986 is because our business, like many other small businesses out there, for applications, software, service providers, all kinds of small businesses across the United States, we serve a global market. One of the wonderful things about the internet and the explosion of the cloud is that basically we're able to serve millions of business-to-business customers, and we're doing it internationally for large multinational companies. But 1986 is another era for us. 1986 was also the time that the Electronic Communications and Privacy Act came out. And this was a really good act at the time. It was updating things around federal wiretapping and electronic eavesdropping permissions. And this was really to try to get a balance between what law enforcement needed and what the privacy of your citizens needed. And that's a very important thing, don't get me wrong. Privacy, we all value our privacy, especially coming from Texas. So we definitely understand that. But one of the issues is that the regulations that were formed in 1986 are the things that govern a lot of the transactions we have in the cloud now. Most importantly, they don't just govern the things that we do here in the United States, but they have impact on what our small businesses are doing to serve international customers. So as I mentioned, we're a small software company. We're able to communicate with global customers who care about where their data is being stored, the confidentiality of that data, and how that data can be handled. They're also worried about things like how much of the US government can access that data, especially if they're multinational companies that are headquartered in other countries. For example, you're a Microsoft partner, you might have data stored in Azure, which could be stored in all kinds of data centers across the world. You might be using outsourcing, or you might have your development teams working in different regions of the world. There are lots of ways that this impacts you, even as a very small business. If you have anything going on in the cloud, the LEADS Act does impact you. Understanding cloud privacy and how it affects your business and your customers is very important. I want to make sure that you understand that this is not a political thing. This really isn't. This is not about politics. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a Democratic thing, whatever. It's not about politics from that perspective. It's about making sure that we have a framework in place that makes sure that cloud data remains private. And privacy is really important to all of our customers. I think we can all agree on that. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about LEADS. But law enforcement, obviously we want them to have access to the data that they need. We live in very troubled times, and cybersecurity is a huge issue all by itself. But we want to make sure that law enforcement have to obtain a search warrant to access that digital communications from a cloud computing service provider. We want to make sure that they have to access the content from a digital communications from a cloud service computing provider. We need to improve the fair use of the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. The reason for that is basically the data that belongs overseas belongs to those citizens, right? It's just the same as in the United States. We want our data to belong to us. We shouldn't have it accessed by other countries. And so the other countries also don't want to have their data accessed by us, right? It makes all the sense in the world. And then the other issue is really making sure that warrants that are executed in the United States only reach internally in the United States. And this obviously applies to people who are US citizens, green card holders, lawful permanent residents of the United States, or companies that are incorporated in the United States. So US warrants should only reach US borders. And those are kind of the three big things that we're really campaigning for. The regret on this is if this kind of act doesn't actually go through, is that number one, we don't update the framework that we need for cloud computing going forward. Number two is that it really has an impact from who you provide your services to. If your customers are not feeling comfortable about doing business with people in the United States, it makes a big impact in terms of the markets that you serve, and then they're worried about their own data. which means that all kinds of weird sovereignty behaviors start coming up, right? It'll be easier to do transactions with people who are based in the countries where they're based versus doing business with people who are in the United States. And so that's why Leeds is important. This is not a lobbying thing. This is not a political thing. This is not a Republican or Democrat thing, right? This is really about making sure we have a cloud privacy framework where we can do business in the cloud. And if you're a small business, if you're a Microsoft partner or any other kind of cloud services provider, you should understand this. You should see that your data is being replicated, is being backed up, is being managed across the world. And we want that for our customers. And so making sure that Leeds is part of that is very important. So I wanted to invite you to do a couple of different things. One is to join an organization called Voices for Innovation. Again, this is not a lobbying thing, it's not a politics thing. It's about working on things that you believe in. The reason I'm making this video is basically I've had the opportunity to work with Voices for Innovation, and I've really felt that there's a lot of impact you can have even as a small business. Before, I have to say, I didn't really care about politics in any shape, way, or form. I didn't think that politics I could make any difference whatsoever in the White House. But now I realize that when I'm working with this organization, I can actually have my voice be heard. This is not about everybody having the same opinion either. This is just about making an impact and having our representatives understand what's important to our small businesses. So I encourage you to go to Voices for Innovation. There's a link on here, and also you can go straight to their site, or you can go to Twitter and say @VFI.org. And what I recommend you go through is basically there's a letter that's already prepared. You can go through, you read that, you can customize it however you want, and it gets sent to your representatives. The other thing you can do is have an impact on Twitter. I use Twitter all the time. Everybody has time for 140 characters, right? So Twitter is a great way to do that. Tweet your representative. Tell them that Leeds is important. If doing business in the cloud is important for you, then doing Leeds is important. So please make sure that you do these things. And I welcome any conversation that you'd like to have. I'm @Moneypenny on Twitter and easy to find. Thanks so much.